The emergency alarm echoed through the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of worlds rushed to their seats as the massive holographic display flickered to life. The image showed a beautiful blue and green planet surrounded by dark, angular ships. Admiral Thex-9 stepped forward on his 6 legs. His shell clicked against the floor as he moved. Fellow council members, we have received a desperate call for help. The peaceful colony of Kithara Prime is under attack. The hologram zoomed in to show the planet's surface. Smoke rose from several cities. Small figures could be seen running through the streets. The watching representatives made worried sounds. The Vrak Syndicate has taken control of 3 major population centers. Admiral Thex-9 continued. They hold over 50,000 Zilani civilians as hostages. The pirates demand complete control of the planet's crystal mines. A tall, graceful being stood up from the Zilani section. Her skin was pale green, and her large eyes were filled with tears. Council members, please. My people are dying. The Vrak grow more violent each day. Children are crying for their parents. Elderly Zilani are being denied medicine. The council chamber filled with angry voices. Representatives shouted about the need for action, but Admiral Thex-9 raised his clawed hands for silence. The situation is very difficult, he said. Our nearest fleet is 3 weeks away from Kithara Prime. The second Altarian fleet could reach them in 18 days. The Centauri Defense Force needs at least 25 days. Too long, cried the Zilani representative. My people cannot wait that long. Admiral Thex-9 looked uncomfortable. His mandibles clicked nervously. There is one fleet that could reach Kithara Prime in 3 days. The chamber fell silent. Every representative leaned forward in their seats. Which fleet? Asked the Zilani representative, hope filling her voice. Admiral Thex-9 turned toward the human section. A single man sat there, dressed in a simple blue uniform. His black hair was neat, and his dark eyes were calm. Ambassador Kim Min-jun, Admiral Thex-9 said quietly. Your Earth's 7th Expeditionary Fleet is currently near the Proxima System. They could reach Kithara Prime very quickly. Ambassador Kim Min-jun stood slowly. He looked around the chamber and saw the expressions on every face. Some looked hopeful. Others looked worried. A few looked terrified. Admiral Thex-9 is correct, Kim Min-jun said in a steady voice. The 7th Fleet could reach Kithara Prime in 72 hours. The Zilani representative stepped forward eagerly. Then please, send your fleet. Save my people. But Kim Min-jun held up his hand. I must warn you about something first. The 7th Fleet has a certain reputation. Whispers filled the chamber. Several representatives shifted in their seats. The ambassador from Rigel Prime stood up. We all know about human fleets, the Rigelian said nervously. They solve problems with excessive force. The Battle of Kepler Station, muttered another representative. The humans destroyed an entire pirate armada in 6 minutes. What about the siege of New Titan? Added a third voice. The human fleet left nothing but metal debris. Ambassador Kim Min-jun listened to the whispers. His face showed no emotion. Captain Park So-young commands the 7th Fleet. She is very good at her job. The Zilani representative looked around the chamber. Fear and doubt filled every face. But her people were dying. I don't care about reputations, she said firmly. My children are in danger. If the humans can save them, then please ask them to come. Admiral Thex-9 looked at Kim Min-jun. Kim Min-jun nodded. I will send the message immediately. The holographic display changed to show a massive human starship. Its hull was dark gray and covered with weapon ports. The ship looked like it was built for war. Other ships surrounded it, all equally impressive and dangerous. The ESV Indomitable, Admiral Thex-9 said quietly. Captain Park So-young's flagship. On the ship's bridge, a woman with short black hair studied a tactical display. Her uniform was crisp, and her posture was perfect. Captain Park So-young had commanded the 7th Fleet for 5 years. In that time, they had never lost a battle. "Captain," said her communications officer, "we're receiving a priority message from Ambassador Kim Min-jun." Captain Park read the message carefully. Her expression remained calm, but her officers could see the intensity in her eyes. "Commander Lee Jae-sung," she said to her tactical officer, "analyze the Kithara Prime situation. I want to know everything about the Vrak positions, their ships, and their capabilities." "Yes, Captain," Commander Lee replied. His fingers moved quickly over his console. Captain Park turned to her medical officer. "Dr. Choi Hae-jin, prepare casualty projections for a hostage rescue operation." Dr. Choi looked up from her medical display. "Captain, if we use standard assault tactics, civilian casualties could be very high." "I know," Captain Park said grimly. "That's why we won't be using standard tactics." The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at their captain. "Ma'am?" Commander Lee asked carefully. Captain Park stood and walked to the main display. The image of Kithara Prime rotated slowly, showing the 3 occupied cities. "Send a message to all ships," she ordered. "Full battle preparations, but non-standard loadouts. I want every non-lethal weapon system checked and ready. Contact Marine Colonel Yoon Tae-ho. Tell him we're planning a precision operation." "Captain," her communications officer said hesitantly, "should I inform the Council of our estimated arrival time?" Captain Park looked at the image of the frightened Zilani civilians. "Tell them we'll be there in 60 hours, not 72. And tell them—" She paused, thinking carefully. "Tell them the 7th Fleet understands the situation completely." Back in the council chamber, representatives were still arguing. Some insisted that human intervention was too dangerous. Others argued that it was the only hope for the hostages. Ambassador Kim Min-jun received the message from Captain Park. He stood and addressed the chamber. "Captain Park So-young sends her regards," he announced. "The 7th Fleet will reach Kithara Prime in 60 hours. She wants the Council to know that she understands exactly what needs to be done." The Zilani representative clasped her hands together in relief. "Thank you, Ambassador. Thank your captain." But as the council session ended, many representatives left with worried expressions. They had all heard stories about human fleets. They all knew what happened when humans decided to solve a problem. The question was, would there be anything left of Kithara Prime when Captain Park So-young was finished with it? Captain Park So-young stood alone in her ready room, looking at the wall display that showed the history of the 7th Fleet. Images of battles flashed by. Destroyed pirate ships, rescued colonies, and grateful survivors. But she knew that other species saw something different when they looked at these same images. The door chimed, and Commander Lee Jae-sung entered. His tactical uniform was neat, and his expression was serious. Behind him came Dr. Choi Hae-jin and Marine Colonel Yoon Tae-ho. "Sit down," Captain Park said, gesturing to the chairs around her conference table. "We need to discuss the Kithara Prime situation." Dr. Choi activated her medical tablet. "Captain, I've been reviewing the reports from previous Vrak encounters. They use their hostages as human shields. Any direct assault will result in massive civilian casualties." Colonel Yoon nodded grimly. "The Vrak are brutal but not stupid. They've positioned their forces in the most populated areas of each city. Schools, hospitals, residential centers." Commander Lee brought up a tactical display. "Ma'am, the Vrak have 15 heavy cruisers in orbit and approximately 8,000 ground troops. They've built defensive positions around the civilian centers." Captain Park studied the display carefully. She could see exactly why the Council was nervous about sending her fleet. The 7th Fleet had earned its reputation through decisive action. "Tell me about Kepler Station," she said quietly. Her officers exchanged glances. Commander Lee cleared his throat. "Ma'am, the pirates at Kepler Station were using captured civilians to power their slave markets when they refused to surrender. We destroyed their entire fleet in 6 minutes, Captain Park finished. Every pirate ship turned into metal debris. But how many civilians did we lose? None, Dr. Choi said immediately. You ordered precision strikes on their weapon systems first. The pirates abandoned the civilian ships when they realized they couldn't win. Captain Park turned to Colonel Yoon. New Titan? 300 pirates held a mining colony hostage, the Marine colonel replied. They were killing 5 civilians every hour until their demands were met. You gave me 12 hours to solve the problem. And you did it in 8, Captain Park said with the hint of a smile. With 0 civilian casualties and all pirates captured alive. The galaxy doesn't remember the details, Commander Lee said with frustration. They only remember that human fleets end problems quickly and completely. Captain Park stood and walked to her viewport. Through the transparent metal, she could see the other ships of her fleet. The ESV Determination. The ESV Relentless. The ESV Mercy's Edge. Each ship was powerful enough to destroy cities. But that wasn't what made them effective. Dr. Choi, she said without turning around, how long would it take you to develop a non-lethal gas that works on Vrak physiology? The medical officer looked surprised. Captain, I'd need to analyze their biological structure first. Maybe 18 hours once I have proper samples? Commander Lee. What would happen if we jammed all communications around Kithara Prime? The Vrak would lose contact with their orbital fleet and ground units, Lee replied thoughtfully. Their coordination would collapse within hours. End quote. Captain Park turned to Colonel Yoon. How many Marines do you have trained in non-lethal infiltration techniques? All of them, Colonel Yoon said proudly. Every Marine in the 7th Fleet can operate with precision weapons and non-lethal tools. Captain Park returned to her seat and looked at each of her officers. I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. We are not going to Kithara Prime to destroy the Vrak Syndicate. The room fell silent. Dr. Choi blinked in confusion. Ma'am? Commander Lee asked carefully. We are going to Kithara Prime to save 50,000 innocent lives, Captain Park continued. The Vrak are simply obstacles that need to be moved. Colonel Yoon leaned forward. Captain, are you saying we're not going to engage the pirate fleet? Oh, we'll engage them, Captain Park said with a cold smile. But not the way they expect. Not the way the Council expects. And definitely not the way we've done it before. She activated the main display and brought up detailed scans of Kithara Prime. The 3 occupied cities appeared as red zones on the surface. Dr. Choi, I want you to develop 3 different non-lethal compounds. 1 for airborne deployment, 1 for water systems, and 1 for direct injection. All must be effective on Vrak physiology, but completely harmless to Zelani. That's very complicated, Captain, Dr. Choi said slowly. But possible. Commander Lee, prepare our electronic warfare systems. I want every Vrak communication, every sensor, every weapon system on this planet vulnerable to our control. Yes, ma'am, Lee replied, his eyes brightening with understanding. Colonel Yoon, prepare your Marines for the most difficult mission they've ever attempted. They need to infiltrate 3 heavily defended cities simultaneously, neutralize thousands of armed pirates, and do it all without harming a single civilian. Colonel Yoon grinned. My Marines live for challenges like this, Captain. Captain Park looked at each of them again. The Council expects us to arrive and destroy everything in our path. The Vrak expect us to blast through their defenses with overwhelming firepower. The civilians expect to die in the crossfire. She stood and placed her hands on the table. We're going to prove all of them wrong. The 7th Fleet doesn't solve problems through destruction. We solve them through precision. Dr. Choi raised her hand hesitantly. Captain, What if the Vrak refuse to surrender? What if they start killing hostages when they realize what we're doing? Captain Park's expression became very serious. Then we remind them why the galaxy calls us the most lethal fleet in human space. But we do it in a way that saves lives, instead of ending them. The three officers looked at each other, then back at their captain. They had served with Park So-young for years. They had seen her make impossible decisions and achieve impossible victories. But this mission was different from anything they had attempted before. "Ma'am," Commander Lee said quietly, "the whole galaxy is watching this operation. If we succeed, thanks for watching." "If we succeed," Captain Park interrupted, "maybe they'll finally understand what makes human fleets truly dangerous." She looked out the viewport again at her fleet. Each ship was preparing for battle in its own way. Weapon systems were being calibrated, Marines were checking equipment, and medical teams were preparing for casualties. "Send a message to all ship commanders," she ordered. "Full stealth approach to Kithara Prime. We're going to arrive quietly and end this quickly. But we're going to do it our way." As her officers left to carry out their orders, Captain Park remained alone in her ready room. On her desk was a photo of her family back on Earth. Her daughter had drawn a picture of Captain Park's ship with the words, "My mom saves people," written in crayon. The little girl understood something that the rest of the galaxy was about to learn. The most lethal fleet in human space wasn't lethal because it destroyed everything in its path. It was lethal because nothing could stop it from protecting innocent lives. And soon, the Vrak Syndicate would discover exactly what that meant. The bridge of the ESV Indomitable was completely silent as the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Captain Park So-young stood at the center of the command deck, watching the tactical display as it populated with enemy contacts. 15 Vrak cruisers in orbit, just as reported, Commander Lee Jae-sung announced quietly. They're positioned in a defensive formation around the planet. On the surface of Kithara Prime, Vrak warlord Gethak was drinking fermented blood wine when his tactical officer burst into the command center. "Warlord, ships approaching the system." Gethak stood up from his throne, spilling wine across his armored chest. "How many?" "What fleet?" "Unknown configuration," the tactical officer replied nervously. 15 vessels. They just appeared at the edge of sensor range." Gethak smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Finally! I was wondering when someone would come to challenge us. Charge weapons and prepare to destroy them. But something strange happened. The approaching ships didn't attack. Instead, they began to move in patterns that made no sense. Back on the Indomitable, Captain Park was implementing the first phase of her plan. "All ships, begin demonstration maneuvers. I want them to see exactly what they're dealing with." The human ships suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds. They performed turns that should have crushed their crews with gravitational force. They flew in formations so precise that their hulls almost touched. "Ma'am," her communications officer said with amazement, "the Vrak fleet is not moving to intercept. They're just watching." "Perfect," Captain Park replied. "Dr. Choi, status on the biological analysis?" Dr. Choi looked up from her medical console. "Captain, I've been scanning their communication frequencies. I'm getting excellent readings on Vrak physiology. Give me 6 more hours and I'll have the compounds ready." On Kithara Prime, Warlord Gethak was no longer smiling. His ships had been built for war, but they looked clumsy and slow compared to the human vessels. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Why aren't they attacking?" His tactical officer was studying the sensor readings with growing fear. "Sir, their maneuvers are impossible. No known technology can allow ships to move like that." "Nonsense," Gethak roared. "Open communications with their fleet." But when his communications officer tried to contact the human ships, nothing happened. The frequencies were completely jammed. "Sir," the officer said nervously, "they've somehow blocked all our external communications. We can't reach our orbital fleet." Captain Park smiled as she watched the Vrak try desperately to establish contact with their ships. Phase 2. Commander Lee. Begin the Ghost Protocol. Yes, ma'am, Lee replied, his fingers dancing over his tactical console. Suddenly, the Vrak's sensors began showing impossible readings. Human ships appeared to be in multiple locations at the same time. Their weapon signatures vanished and reappeared randomly. Some readings showed ships that were larger than space stations. On the Vrak flagship, chaos was spreading through the bridge crew. Sir, the humans have 30 ships. No. Readings show 12 ships. Wait. Now there are 47 ships on sensors. Warlord Gethak grabbed his tactical officer by the throat. Find me their real position. But it was impossible. The human electronic warfare systems were feeding false data directly into every Vrak sensor array. The pirates could see the human fleet with their eyes, but their instruments showed them ghosts and shadows. Commander Lee, Captain Park said calmly. Begin broadcasting on all Vrak frequencies. Channel open, Captain. Captain Park activated the ship's communication system. Her voice was broadcast to every Vrak ship and ground position around Kithara Prime. Attention Vrak Syndicate forces. This is Captain Park So-Young of Earth's 7th Expeditionary Fleet. You are holding innocent civilians hostage. Release them immediately. Warlord Gethak finally managed to respond. Human. You dare threaten the mighty Vrak Syndicate? We have 50,000 hostages. Attack us, and they all die. Captain Park's voice remained completely calm. Warlord Gethak, I need you to understand something. This is not a threat. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning. You think your 15 ships can defeat our forces? Gethak laughed. We have defenses you cannot imagine. Actually, Captain Park replied, we have defenses you cannot imagine. Dr. Choi. Begin the demonstration. Dr. Choi activated a new program she had been working on. Suddenly, every Vrak weapon system on the planet began to malfunction. Guns that had been perfectly maintained for years suddenly wouldn't fire. Defense shields flickered and died. Communication arrays went completely silent. What did you do? Gethak screamed into his communicator. We studied your technology, Captain Park replied. Every Vrak weapon uses the same basic power coupling system. Every shield generator operates on identical frequencies. Every communication system uses standardized protocols. Colonel Yoon stepped forward on the bridge. Captain, my Marines are ready for deployment. Not yet, Colonel. First, we need to have a proper conversation with our Vrak friends. Captain Park activated a new broadcast frequency. This time, her message went to every Vrak soldier, every pirate crew member, and every ship captain in the system. Vrak forces, this is Captain Park So-Young. I want to tell you a story. 6 months ago, we encountered a group of pirates near the Centauri system. They had taken civilian hostages, just like you have. They refused to surrender, just like you are doing. She paused for effect. Those pirates had heard stories about human fleets. They thought we would attack their ships and kill their hostages in the crossfire. They were wrong. End quote. The bridge crew listened as their captain's voice carried across space to every Vrak position. We didn't destroy their ships. We disabled every weapon, every shield, every engine. Then, we boarded their vessels and removed every single pirate without harming a single hostage. The pirates spent 2 years in rehabilitation centers, learning useful skills. Most of them are now productive members of society. Warlord Gethak was becoming more frustrated with each word. Lies. Humans are destroyers. You turn everything to metal and fire. Some humans do, Captain Park agreed. But we are not those humans. We are the humans who specialize in solving problems without breaking things that matter. She activated the tactical display, visible to all Vrak forces. It showed detailed scans of every pirate position, every weapon, every ship, It showed the locations of every civilian hostage down to individual buildings. As you can see, we know exactly where you are. We know exactly where your prisoners are. We know exactly how many weapons you have, and exactly how to disable them. The display updated to show projected casualty numbers for various attack scenarios. Every projection showed 0 civilian deaths and minimal Vrak casualties. You have 2 choices, Captain Park continued. You can surrender now and be treated with fairness and dignity. Or you can continue to resist and discover why the galaxy calls us the most lethal fleet in human space. Warlord Gethak looked around his command center. His officers were staring at their malfunctioning equipment with fear in their eyes. Outside, the human ships continued their impossible maneuvers, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. What guarantee do we have? He finally asked. Captain Park's voice carried a note of absolute certainty. You have the word of Captain Park, So Young, and the 7th Fleet. We do not break our promises. We do not leave innocent people to suffer. And we do not fail. The Vrak warlord looked at his tactical display one more time. The human projections showed exactly how they could remove every pirate from the planet without harming the civilians. It should have been impossible. But then again, everything about these humans seemed impossible. Warlord Gethak stared at the tactical display for 30 seconds that felt like hours. Around him, his officers waited for orders that might determine whether they lived or died. Finally, he made his choice. Never, he roared into the communicator. The Vrak Syndicate does not surrender to anyone. Especially not to soft-hearted humans. Captain Park So Young closed her eyes for a moment. She had hoped the pirates would be reasonable, but she had prepared for this outcome. Colonel Yoon, she said quietly. Launch all marine pods, Dr. Choi. Begin atmospheric deployment of Compound 7. Commander Lee. Initiate precision strike protocol. Yes, ma'am. All 3 officers replied simultaneously. The human fleet suddenly changed from mysterious visitors to deadly predators. But they attacked in ways the Vrak had never seen before. The first strikes came from orbit. Beams of pure energy lanced down from the human ships, but they didn't target buildings or population centers. Instead, they hit power generators, shield projectors, and weapon arrays with surgical precision. In the first Vrak stronghold, built around a Zalani school, the pirate commander watched in shock as every single defensive turret simply stopped working. The weapons didn't explode. They didn't catch fire. They just quietly shut down as their power systems were severed. Sir, his tactical officer shouted, we've lost all orbital communications. Above them, Commander Lee had targeted every communications relay with pinpoint accuracy. The Vrak forces were now isolated from each other, unable to coordinate their defenses. Shields are down in sectors 3, 7, and 12, another officer reported. But the most unsettling thing was the silence. There were no explosions, no buildings collapsing, no screams from civilian areas. The human attack was so precise that the hostages didn't even know a battle had begun. Dr. Choi monitored her deployment from the medical bay of the Indomitable. Captain, Compound 7 is dispersing through the atmospheric systems of all 3 cities. Concentration will reach effective levels in 22 minutes. Compound 7 was her masterpiece. It would make Vrak soldiers drowsy and slow their reaction times without causing any permanent damage. More importantly, it was completely harmless to Zalani physiology. Colonel Yoon's Marines were already in motion. 60 stealth pods launched from the human ships, invisible to Vrak sensors. Each pod carried a team of 5 Marines, equipped with the most advanced non-lethal weapons in human space. Sergeant Kim Jae-won led the first team into the school where 300 Zalani children were being held. His Marines moved through the building like shadows, their advanced armor making them nearly invisible. Contact, whispered Marine Cho Min-jung over the team communication channel. 2 guards in the main hallway. Use sleep darts, Sergeant Kim ordered. No permanent injuries. The 2 Vrak pirates never knew what hit them. They simply collapsed quietly to the floor, overcome by the fast-acting sedative. They would wake up in 12 hours, with nothing worse than mild headaches. Throughout the 3 occupied cities, similar scenes played out. Marine teams moved methodically through each building, neutralizing guards with precision weapons that caused no lasting harm. The compound in the air was making the pirates sluggish and confused, but it had no effect on the Zilani civilians. In the hospital complex, Corporal Lee Sung-ho found himself face-to-face with a Vrak soldier holding a Zilani child as a shield. The alien's weapon was pointed at the little girl's head. "Stay back," the pirate growled. "I'll kill her." Corporal Lee didn't hesitate. His non-lethal rifle fired a carefully calculated stun pulse that struck the Vrak in the shoulder. The alien dropped unconscious immediately, and the Marine caught the child before she could fall. "Shh," he whispered in the simple Zilani he had learned during the journey. "You're safe now." Captain Park monitored the entire operation from her bridge. Status reports flowed in from all Marine teams. Building 7 secured. 23 pirates neutralized. 0 casualties. Hospital complex cleared. All medical staff and patients safe. Residential tower 5 complete. 41 pirates in custody. No injuries. But Warlord Gethak was not giving up easily. In his command bunker, beneath the main city, he activated his final weapon. A massive bomb that would destroy everything within 5 kilometers. "If I cannot rule this planet," he snarled to his remaining officers, "then no one can have it." Commander Lee detected the bomb activation immediately. "Captain, massive explosive device powering up in the central command bunker." Captain Park didn't even blink. "Dr. Choi, deploy Compound 12 directly into the bunker's air system. Colonel Yoon, I need your fastest team at those coordinates now." Dr. Choi's fingers flew over her controls. "Compound 12 away. Direct injection into their air recycling system." Compound 12 was much stronger than the atmospheric version. Within seconds of breathing it, even the strongest Vrak would fall into deep, harmless sleep. Lieutenant Park Ji-ho and his team were the closest Marines to the bunker. They rappelled down ventilation shafts and moved through maintenance tunnels at impossible speed. 30 seconds until the bomb activates, Commander Lee announced. Lieutenant Park kicked down the bunker door just as Warlord Gethak reached for the detonation switch. The Marine's stun weapon fired once, and the massive alien collapsed like a falling tree. "Bomb disarmed," Lieutenant Park reported calmly. "Warlord secured." Across all 3 cities, the battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. Every Vrak pirate was unconscious or in custody. Every civilian was safe and unharmed. Every building was intact. Captain Park stood on her bridge and looked at the tactical display. Green indicators showed successful completion of objectives. Medical reports showed 0 civilian casualties and 0 serious injuries among the pirates. "Ma'am," her communications officer said with wonder in his voice, "we're receiving thanks from the civilian population. They're saying most of them didn't even know we were there until it was over." Whither? Dr. Choi looked up from her medical station. "Captain, casualty report. 50,037 Zilani civilians rescued. All healthy. 8,215 Vrak pirates captured. All alive and uninjured. Our Marines report 7 minor scrapes and 1 stubbed toe." Commander Lee was reviewing the tactical analysis. Orbital fleet neutralized without firing a shot. All Vrak vessels disabled but repairable. No destruction of infrastructure or civilian property. Colonel Yoon's voice came over the communication system from the planet's surface. "Captain, local Zilani authorities are asking how they should handle the prisoners. They want to know if we're planning to execute them." Captain Park activated the general communication channel. "Tell the Zilani authorities that all prisoners will be turned over to the Galactic Council for fair trial and rehabilitation. The 7th Fleet does not execute prisoners. She looked around her bridge at the amazed faces of her crew. They had just achieved a perfect victory. No one had died. No infrastructure had been destroyed. The hostages were free, and the pirates were alive to face justice. Communications, she ordered. Send a message to Ambassador Kim Min-jun at the Galactic Council. Mission accomplished. All objectives achieved. Tell him. She paused and smiled slightly. Tell him the Seventh Fleet has once again proven why precision is more lethal than destruction. As the human ships prepared to transfer prisoners and provide medical aid, the galaxy watched and tried to understand what they had just witnessed. The most lethal fleet in human space had solved an impossible problem without breaking anything that mattered. They were beginning to realize that being lethal didn't mean destroying everything in your path. Sometimes, being truly lethal meant being so precise and effective that violence became unnecessary. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was more crowded than it had been in decades. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had come to hear the report on what was already being called the Kithara Prime Miracle. Admiral Thex 9 stood at the center podium, but his usual confidence was nowhere to be seen. He kept looking at his notes, as if he couldn't believe what he was reading. Fellow council members, he began slowly, I have received the final report on the hostage situation at Kithara Prime. The chamber fell silent. Every representative leaned forward in their seats. Captain Park So-young and the Earth's 7th Expeditionary Fleet achieved complete success in their rescue mission. Murmurs filled the chamber. The Rigelian ambassador raised a tentacle. Admiral, what were the casualty figures? Admiral Thex 9 looked at his report again. 50,000. 37 Zelani civilians rescued. All unharmed. 8,000. 215 Vrak pirates captured. All alive and... He paused, as if he couldn't believe the words. All uninjured. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Representatives stood and shouted questions. Impossible. How can you capture 8,000 pirates without injuries? What about their ships? Their bases? Admiral Thex 9 raised his clawed hands for silence. All Vrak vessels were disabled but left repairable. All infrastructure on Kithara Prime remains intact. No civilian property was damaged. Ambassador Kim Min-jun stood slowly from the human section. Every eye in the chamber turned toward him. How? Asked the Centauri representative simply. Kim Min-jun activated a holographic display. Images appeared, showing the precision strikes, the marine operations, and the careful medical procedures. Captain Park So-young specializes in what she calls selective lethality, he explained. Her fleet is lethal to oppression, to cruelty, to those who threaten innocent lives. But they are protectors of the defenseless. On the display, they could see Marines carefully carrying unconscious pirates to medical stations. They could see Dr. Choi treating minor injuries among both the rescued and the captured. They could see human engineers repairing damage to civilian infrastructure. The humans had weapons that could have destroyed the planet, the Altarian ambassador said with confusion. Why didn't they use them? Because, Kim Min-jun replied, being able to destroy something doesn't mean you should. True strength is having the power to crush your enemies, but choosing instead to save everyone involved. The Zelani representative who had first pleaded for help stood up. Her large eyes were bright with tears of gratitude. I have a message from my people, she announced. The children of Kithara Prime have made drawings for the human fleet. They draw pictures of Marines, carrying them to safety. They draw pictures of human doctors, healing their families. She activated her own display, showing hundreds of colorful drawings made by young Zelani hands. Pictures of human ships that looked like protective angels. Pictures of Captain Park with a halo of light around her head. Pictures of humans and Zelani holding hands. My people are building a monument, the Zelani representative continued. But it is not a monument to human firepower or human technology. It is a monument to human restraint, to the choice to save rather than destroy. Ambassador Kim Min-jun felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Pride that came from admiration rather than fear. Back on Kithara Prime, Captain Park So-young walked through the main city with Colonel Yoon and Dr. Choi. Everywhere they looked, they saw Zilani civilians rebuilding their lives. Children played in parks that could have been battlefields. Families sat together in homes that could have been ruins. "Captain," Colonel Yoon said quietly, "my Marines are asking if this is how we'll handle all missions from now on. What do you think?" Captain Park asked. Colonel Yoon smiled. "I think my Marines are proud to be in a fleet that saves lives instead of taking them. This mission was harder than any battle we've ever fought, but it was also the most rewarding." Dr. Choi checked her medical tablet. "The psychological evaluation of the captured pirates is interesting. Most of them are asking about rehabilitation programs. They want to know if they can learn to live peaceful lives." "What did you tell them?" Captain Park asked. "I told them that humans believe everyone deserves a second chance," Dr. Choi replied. "Even former pirates. If humans believe. If you not believe." As they walked, Zilani civilians approached to thank them. But what touched Captain Park most was when a small Zilani child ran up to her and handed her a flower. "Thank you for not breaking my home," the child said in simple Standard Galactic. Captain Park knelt down to the child's level. "Thank you for trusting us to save it." 3 weeks later, the communication systems throughout the galaxy carried an unprecedented message. It was a joint statement from 17 different species that had been victims of pirate attacks. "To the Galactic Council and all member worlds," the message began. "We, the survivors of various attacks by criminal organizations, wish to make an official request." The statement continued. "When future emergency situations arise that require military intervention, we specifically request the assistance of Earth's human fleets, not because they are the most destructive, but because they are the most precise, not because they eliminate problems, but because they solve them." The message was signed by colonies, mining operations, research stations, and trading posts from across the galaxy. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Han Soo-jin read the reports from the 7th Fleet with satisfaction. She had always known that Captain Park So-young understood something that many military commanders missed. The most powerful weapon was often the one you chose not to use. Her communication system chimed with an incoming message from the Galactic Council. It was a formal request for human assistance with a situation near the Vega system. Pirates had taken control of a medical research station. Admiral Han smiled as she forwarded the mission to Captain Lee Min-kyu of the 5th Fleet. Another opportunity for humanity to show the galaxy what true strength looked like. Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Kim Min-jun received dozens of requests for human fleet assistance. But he also received something more valuable. Messages of friendship and alliance from species that had once feared human military power. The galaxy was learning that Earth's fleets were lethal in the most important way possible. They were deadly to oppression, fatal to cruelty, and absolutely destructive to those who threatened innocent lives. But they were also the greatest protectors the galaxy had ever known. Captain Park So-young stood on her bridge as the 7th Fleet prepared to depart Kithara Prime. The planet below was peaceful and free. The captured pirates were being transferred to rehabilitation centers. The civilians were safely reunited with their families. "Captain," her communications officer announced, "we're receiving 17 new mission requests from the Council." Captain Park looked at her crew. Commander Lee was already analyzing the tactical requirements. Dr. Choi was preparing medical supplies for unknown situations. Colonel Yoon was reviewing marine deployment strategies. They were the most lethal fleet in human space. They were feared throughout the galaxy. They had the power to destroy worlds, and the precision to save individual lives. And they had never been prouder of their reputation. "Set course for the Vega system," Captain Park ordered. Time to show the galaxy once again why mercy is the most lethal weapon of all. As the human ships jumped to hyperspace, they left behind a changed galaxy. A galaxy that was beginning to understand that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to protect. The most lethal fleet in human space had responded to a call for help, and in doing so, they had proven that sometimes the greatest victory was the one where everyone lived to see tomorrow.